So my name is Ken Heaps. I'm Ken Marlowe Bricks, as I'm often known on YouTube and Instagram. This is Ghostbusters Afterlife, based on the 2021 film of the same title. This was a collaboration build for Dinlug and Cowlug, the two LEGO user groups that are in Colorado. And there was 9 of us that put this together over a period of 7 weeks. And we had a tight deadline because we had to get it done for Fan Expo in Denver, which used to be known as Comic-Con. But Fan Expo is a great event to go to, and we really wanted to bring the thunder, and I think we did really good with this build.
The whole layout is absolutely fantastic here. So let's start with kind of the corner John's showing there right now. There's a whole lot happening. What's the storyline over here?
So in the movie, it takes place on an old rundown farm. And so the farmhouse here was done by one of our members, Heather. She did an amazing job on the farmhouse. We're really happy with it. And then in front of that is what we call a trap field. It is if you haven't seen the movie, huge spoiler, it's the dirt behind the dirt farm. And so this trap field is completely mechanized using Lego products, Lego motors. Has one Lego motor in there, and it hits a couple of contact pads, and when it hits the contact pad, it changes the light. All the lights are aftermarket, and there's 240 LEDs in there that are individually wired. Due to the timeline, it was just easier to do the individual wires and plug and play. And then there's the blinking is done with some lighting controls in there. And then the barn there's a little bit of a Easter egg there. In the movie, they go down into a bunker, and in the bunker, he has a little diorama, and the diorama has a lunchbox that's been pounded in to represent the barn. And so here we try to represent, or we try to build a representation of that lunchbox. So and then the silos, of course, to run the trap field.
And then we've got some nice fields as we kind of make our way towards the front here.
Yeah, so we have the field. We should have there it is. We have a upside down truck. That's a key moment in the first couple minutes of the movie. And the field is a mix of a cornfield, and it's supposed to be like a barley field. And then we have the old road. We have the signs leading up to the house. That was a lot of fun to include those.
Is that some stickers, or how does that work?
Yeah, so those are they're vinyl stickers. So it's an inkjet printer that's been printed onto a vinyl that was done by one of our members, Erin, and she did a really good job with those and replicating the movie.
And then as we make our way here, kind of across the river, you've got the bridge section. What does that bring us into?
So the bridge is kind of an iconic landmark that is shown in the movie, leading into the mine. The bridge was done by Randy. Did a really good job doing a representation of that, and that leads into the Shandor Mine. The Shandor Mine is the mountain, and if you've seen the original Ghostbusters, the pillars that were used to build the original apartment complex in the first movie were mined from the Shandor Mine. And so they actually came out of this mountain. So the kids in the movie, they drive up the road, go to the top, and they're hanging out on the lift. So we have the lift that was built by Noah here at the top of the mountain. He did a really good job representing that. And then the kids also explore there's like a rock face carving that later turns into a throne steps. And so we have that represented here. And this was all done by Larry. Did a great job building these steps and stairs for us. And one little side thing about the mountain, it was a huge undertaking. I mean, it's totally brick built, no burps in the mountain, and it was a really big undertaking. We actually didn't have it finished for Fan Expo. We had to deliver it on site, and we spent the last 2 days building the final bits of it and got it done about 30 minutes before the public showed up. So it was a huge rush to try to get that all complete.
And people watching might notice a little bit of an added feature here in this section. So talk about what you have going on there.
Yeah, so in the movie, you have this rolling fog coming out of the temple and coming down the throne stairs. And so we really wanted to capture that. And we did it using a reptile humidifier that's on a hose, and it's fed through the build, and it comes out in the front here.
You've got a little condensation building up there. Is that affecting the bricks or the build at all?
No, it doesn't. It's being plastic. It dries just fine. And when I get it home, I'll let it air out for a little bit longer and make sure we don't have any built-up condensation.
And then I think there's even more to see as we move around the corner, right?
That's right. So the inside of the temple was done by Erin, and she did a really good job capturing the effect we were looking for in there. You have, so this is the temple of Gozer. Gozer makes a comeback in this movie. And they have the proton packs there to help keep the Well of Souls under control. And so we wanted to make sure we captured both the Well of Souls and the temple, the temple of Gozer.
And the lighting in there is so nice, especially even like the well there with all those different lights under there. So is that kind of all buried underneath the build-up mountain section? You're able to include all that?
Yeah, thank you. So the lighting is all contact pads, so we can actually take each element off and not have to worry about trying to plug in lights during setup. So it makes setup go really smooth and easy. We just set it down. We have to make sure that pad's making contact, and then we can lift it off. And so the lighting underneath the temple is actually really compact, and it allows us to leave it all attached, and we can just put it right in the box. And so, yeah, the mountain is all brick built, but it's all very hollow. And it does allow for the cords to go through there, but honestly, we really didn't need a whole lot of room for the cords because of how compact a design it is.
I like the different colors as well, so it's not just a massive blob of tan on the side. It kind of adds some variation in there.
Yeah, so there is a little bit of reason behind the colors. I would have probably gone with, say, light bluish gray, but light bluish gray and dark bluish gray are very pricey. And so tan was the cheaper option. And then when I was looking around for cheap sellers of the tan, I ended up finding they had some other colors that I was able to mix in to help break it up. And like you said, I didn't want it to have just one solid color. I wanted to have a couple of layers there.
Now, you mentioned that this whole layout was a collaborative, so talk a little about that process and how did kind of each person decide what they were doing? How did you split that up and make sure that when you got into the show, it was all going to work out?
So we had a couple of different designers, so the idea was that we would have like picture design, see what you like to do, and my husband Randy came up with this design. And it was the first one mentioned, and everyone loved it so much that we just went with it. And so Randy designed it. Nikki was our primary coordinator on it, and I was kind of the organizer. I wrangled all the cats. And then we also had Noah and Aaron and Heather and Roby and Larry. I think that's everyone. Hopefully I didn't miss anyone. So there's 9 of us total that did it. And it was, so once we had the design out there, we made a list of all the different features of the build. And everyone had a chance to pick the feature that they really were excited about building. And it gave us, and so then we just had to work together, and just a lot of photos going back and forth over text message, a lot of talking, a lot of working in person to make sure that the elements all fit together. And they were able to build elements at home and bring them on, put them on display. And we actually had the whole build set up in my basement, and everyone came over and built the core of the build. And then any elements they built at home, we just made sure they fit, and they brought them over and did a test fit.
No, that's fantastic. It's great that you were all able to work together and bring such a fantastic layout. Now, I did want to touch back on the dirt section. You kind of talked about that earlier, if we can move back over there. So this is obviously got a lot of movement in it here. So talk a little bit more about kind of the mechanics of this and how this all operates as it runs back and forth there.
So with the dirt farm, I had an idea, and I had to go through about 3 or 4 different revisions, and I did them on a very small scale. About the size of, say, 2 by 4 trap field size, trap size. And I simply took, what actually worked out really well is I simply took a couple of tiles, and I knew how I wanted the dirt part of it to work, the top part of it to work, and I just slid those tiles back and forth, or slid the dirt back and forth across the tiles to kind of represent the lights. So the tiles, I had like a white tile and a red tile, and that represented the lights. And I slid the plates back and forth across the top to kind of feel for how that would look. And that was how, like, I was able to go through a couple of different revisions, and that's how I was able to figure out how to do it at larger scale. And so then I did a small section of this and did it with the actual lights to see how it looked, and I kind of built up from there. And so I was able to do that before I built the entire trap field. Now, the original trap field is a 10 trap by 20 trap size, so it's 200 traps. And I went with 80 traps. So I have 80 red blinking lights, and I have 160 white lights for the total of 240 lights in there.
It's a wonderful effect there. I really like how that turned out as well. The house is great too. So are there any other details you can kind of point out on the house there, or anything? I know one thing that caught my eye was sort of the stained glass window effect in there.
Yeah, so she did the stained glass window by doing transparent plates on their side, and the little known thing is that is because we didn't have the window pane for that, and it really worked out perfectly having that stained glass in there. It really made a nice look.
Do you have any idea how many pieces are in a whole layout like this, or what the size of the layout is?
So we had to borrow some club asset brick in order to build this. So we borrowed 7,500 white 2x4 brick for this build, and so all the white 2x4 brick that are hiding in this build are club assets. Then I added my own brick to it, so we know we have around 10,000 2x4 brick, and we're guessing we have upward of 100,000 bricks total, 100,000 parts in this build.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. There's certainly a ton happening here. Another great part of this is just kind of the landscaping in general. So you see kind of how this section drops down here on the road here. You've got all of the bushes and trees and everything. So talk about some of the design features of that and how you capture that in a layout like this.
From the very start, we designed it all on a base plate size. So it's a 10 inch by 10 inch square. Everything here breaks down into 10 inch by 10 inch squares. And then from there, we built different segments, right? So it's like we built the road on the front row of those squares, and we knew we wanted the road a certain size, and it actually lines up the same as my city mills roads, because I was actually planning on building the town. We have plans to expand this and include the town, and I wanted to use those city mills roads in the town. And then from there, so we started with the standard mills system, and then we kind of just built up layers on top of that. And so the farm, we built it in such a way that we wanted to be able to transport it easily. And so all the plant sections actually come off in 8 by 16 pieces. And then when we went to tear down the build, we realized, it's easier to just keep it on the mills plates. And so we just transport the whole thing assembled in those sections. The silos come off as one piece, and it's hiding all the gear mechanism back here. And so I have the 9-volt connector for the motor, and then I also have my USB connector for the lights. And then we can move the minifigs out of the way. That's one piece. Oops. And then the same thing on this side, and the whole thing just kind of sits in there. It's about 4 bricks thick, the whole trap field, and it just kind of just sets down inside there. And you can see we must have bumped the motor because it stopped moving. Now the great thing about this is this system has been running for 4 days straight. Or not straight, but 2 days straight at Fan Expo, and then another day at another show, and then now it's been running today, and we haven't had any issue with it at all. And right now it locked up, probably just because I was moving it around. But so we have a motor here, and it goes through this reduction gearbox. Now I'm using a 9-volt transformer, but I only have it on the very lowest speed. And at that lowest speed, I still had to put all these gears in here, the gear reduction, in order to get it to move slow enough. And then I just have a gear shaft coming out, and it just sits there and spins constantly. And with that little piston action, it just rotates this back and forth. And if I can restart it here, you can see even on the first speed, the motor is just hauling. But then, with the gear reductions, I'm able to get it to go slow enough. That it's, a lot of people have commented that they don't realize the field's moving because it's moving so slow. And it's not until they see the lights change do they realize that it was moving. And see my...
Oh no. Oh no. Just when you talked about how smoothly it was running.
Yeah, stage fright now. There we go. Perfect. So yeah, I'm really happy with the movement. And back here, I had a problem where the lights, I used contact pads, and so when the light came in contact with the pad, it would just flash for a second. And I wanted to be on a little bit longer than that. And so I ended up with doing a Technic spring-loaded mechanism in there. So that way when it pushes up against the pad, and I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but right here it has a little, and it just has a little actuation there where it pushes up against that spring and engages a little bit longer. And so it allows, instead of having a pulse on there, it allows it to stay engaged while the motor's still in movement, while the motor's still moving.
That's fantastic, and it's a great feature there. So I'm glad it's been running smoothly. Unfortunately, hopefully this doesn't end up causing issues throughout the day. But thanks for kind of taking that apart to show us more.
Absolutely, thank you.